All right, so Dan, you're going to take us through Gnawhole deployment first.
Yeah, so the first thing I'd say about Gnawholes is it depends on your opponent's army as well, and also what scenario you're playing. So we're playing focal point, so there's 5 objectives throughout the middle of the table, and I'm playing against Anthony's Tempest Eye army. So where I position them, this is my deployment zone. I've got 1 in my deployment and 2 in Anthony's, and I'll tell you why I've done that. I would change that depending on who you're playing. So Anthony's Tempest Eye army is very fast, there's a lot of cavalry, and there's some Shadow Warriors in there as well, so there's a little bit of Deep Strike, not that much, but enough that can hurt the Scryer Acolytes that are in my army. They're very frail, even just taking some firepower from them is probably going to push me towards going first. I outdrop, so in my head I'm probably already setting up to go first. In this instance, what I've done is I've put 1 in my deployment, just for the arcane terrain, but also just the threat of the other one. So if you look at Anthony's side of the board, I've put 2 in the sort of near corners of his deployment, enough to threaten the objective that if he were to just abandon them entirely, I would be able to jump out the Gnawhole and steal either of his 2 objectives in his half. I've also put them to the side. One of the reasons I've done that is because if he decides to babysit the Gnawhole, he's going to have to go further back and out of the way, so he's really not going to contest in the middle of the board. So if he decides he wants to leave something behind, there's not really anything in his army that he wants to sit behind, and I would tell you 9 times out of 10 your opponent will put something in front of the Gnawhole to block it. That's why I put it further to the side. There's an argument you can make for putting 1 in the middle of the deployment. That's too easy to block and it's not really a huge inconvenience for him.
I guess because most armies are going to have their forces in the center, so...
Right. So even if you had like a big block of 40 Phoenix Guard, they can't cover both. So you maybe put 1 in front of that and set on that objective. Cool, I'm still threatening something with that one, and you're probably going to block it with something you don't really want to waste. So even if I have no intention of going for the Gnawhole, and I'll say 90% of my games, I don't go for the Gnawhole, I'm already trying to mess with how they're going to deploy and play around that.
I guess it's the threat of always being able to jump through the Gnawholes that keeps your opponent on their toes. So
yep.
By making it look like you might, and that ever looming threat, it gives you certainly one advantage, let alone your tactics and your army list, just the ability to be able to jump through. I've got my Shadow Warriors in this case, which gives me that one opportunity, but certainly you have this continuous opportunity through at least two spots on the board, just from your list.
Yeah, and even the Shadow Warriors, I'm assuming you would rather place them off the table and not put them in front of the Gnawhole.
No.
I would see that as a victory if you did that.
And yeah, even if I did, and your opponent, whether it's a Stormcast, whether it's, some type of unit, and some armies don't have the screening, the cheap screening that, something like Cities does. So you're screening with, very expensive units at times, so...
Yeah. So it depends what you're against. There's a couple of other things that I might do with the Gnawholes. So one of the other deployment things that I do sometimes, it's not very practical in this table, but I might put 1 in my deployment, 1 of my opponents, so they're forced to use something to block with it. I also might put something here. So one tactic I've been known to do, I generally don't run Storm Fiends. One of the things I think is a really good tactic that I do sometimes when I've got 2 engineers, and the list I'm running I do have 2 engineers, I've elected to go for Giselles instead of Storm Fiends, but you can do this, is I might put a engineer right at the back here, where it's outside of unbind range, and I might more warp power next to the Gnawhole for a buff, a unit of Storm Fiends. And I've never really seen people, they generally don't see this coming, but what I've also done before, this is my last drop maybe, I might deploy an engineer right here. So what I might do is use this engineer to buff the Storm Fiends, send them through the Gnawhole, come out here, depending on what's on the other side, if there's something worth going for, and then I'll auto 6 run if I have to, this engineer behind it, to then buff it. So that way I can kind of stop my opponent from shutting them down, I still got access to Warpstone Sparks. So there's times where I might put the Gnawhole on the side of the board, and that might be why. And you can do that with a couple of different units, weapons teams. I find Storm Fiends are the best choice for that because they're compact enough to go through the Gnawhole. They have good short-range shooting, they have good long-range shooting, and what will happen sometimes is you put them here, your opponent might backboard something, maybe even, say over here. They're out of range there, but when I go through the Gnawhole, they're probably not out of range over here. If I'm really not sure and there's something I really want to get and I think my opponent's going to play defensive, I'll put both on the sides. That way it doesn't really matter where they go, nowhere's really safe. So I kind of pick that Skaven triangle formation if that's the case, just because even if they go here, I might deploy aggressively depending on what else they have, if I outdrop them especially. And I might go other sides to know where they go is safe. Quite often you can take something out that your opponent just doesn't see coming because they think it's safe from where you put the Storm Fiends down. And I'm quite happy to put the Storm Fiends down first, just here, they might put something over there, like I said, thinking it's safe, they can't reach them, measure the threat range, when actually there's sort of a sitting duck. So that's another tactic I might do with a Gnawhole. The final thing I might do with a Gnawhole, I'll probably do this more in maybe like a Clan Pestilence army or a, what's the word, Master Clan Heavy army, is I've been known to put all 3 in my end deployment. So the Gnawholes also buff your prayers as well as your spells. I've had games where I've just gone maybe 3 places of power in the previous edition where there's an objective there, and there. I've got a wizard in each one, maybe a Screaming Bell, a Plague Furnace, and a Vermin Lord or something along those lines, and I really want those spells to go off. I might just take them all for myself. If there's nothing that I care about they're doing, or if the objectives are in the middle of the board, where sort of attacking from the side or the back doesn't really weigh the threat, I'll probably take all 3 in my own deployment zone, because I'm probably not going to go through them over there. So if we're fighting in the middle, so Duality of Death for the previous one, I think that might be out the edition now.
It is, yeah, but who knows, maybe someone's playing Duality.
I think one of the new ones, you're just fighting in the middle of the board. Like I have played one, I don't know his name, I haven't played it enough because of the lockdown. But if that's the case, I'll just take all 3 for myself.
I guess what I'm hearing is that, Dan, there is no one silver bullet strategy. You might have an idea, whether you build your army around, Storm Fiends, whether you're your Jezzails, and you got an idea of how you would deploy them. Certainly, you've got a whole bunch of ways to adapt to your opponent and respond to not just the opponent, but the scenario. If I was running my Gloomspite Gits, for example, and I had 140, 160 grots, you might deploy very differently to, let's say, these particular Cities of Sigmar army. So I've heard a couple of really good ideas. Anything you'd want to say on this particular topic, or do you want to get into deployment?
I think we can get into deployment. I would just say be adaptable. Look at the scenario. Look at what your opponent brings to the table. Their threat range is what they're afraid of. That same tactic with Storm Fiends. I've done that with Jezzails as well. When you go for a Gnawhole, there's always a risk of a counter charge. That's the other thing to worry about. Storm Fiends don't particularly care, particularly with their short range shooting. If I feel like I can get something through a Gnawhole and then order one planets far enough ahead to even create a second screen, I've done that before too. So just sort of look at what might hit you back if you decide to go through that strategy. Another thing I do is I might often leave my Claw Lord in a Gnawhole, just because if someone does come forward, that threat is there, I can just jump through it. So, or that engineer, like I mentioned before, I might start over here. He's then free to go through a Gnawhole, and it's probably going to be a Bombardier just so I can shoot a Doom Rocket or something.
Keeping within that 1 inch of that Gnawhole, so you can teleport out immediately.
Exactly. So some people do move off. I'd say particularly if you're playing like an Iron Dwellers army, they hate just putting 5 brutes just to babysit them. They might put the Yard Boys, but they hit harder than the brutes anyway. So I'm quite happy just to take that. So yeah, that's probably all I'd say for the Gnawholes.
Awesome. All right. Well, we'll set up and we'll talk a bit about deployment. All right, Dan. So we have deployed. Talk me through your deployment strategy with the Skaven.
Okay, so it's going to depend really, like I said before, on what your opponent plays. In this instance, I've already set up to go first. And there's a couple of things that are reflective of that in my deployment. For example, I've got my Acolytes over here with a Bombardier. They are outside of the range of the Screaming Bell. If I was going second or someone had a long range threat, I'd probably be trying to protect these a little bit more. The threat to them at the moment, I think, are the Shadow Warriors off the table, so they're going to be looking to zone the board and go first. They're going to use my Clanrats to move forwards. The other thing that I've done, which is maybe a little bit different, is my Jezzails are all the way over here in this corner, and that's because I've identified the threat that I'm worried about in your army as the Pistoliers. So they've gone directly opposite the Pistoliers. I'm quite confident this side that they can probably blow up anything that comes near them. So in the first turn, I'd be looking to take off some of the Pistoliers, or at least a decent amount of them, before we even get going. I think you've got a CP in your army, but even if they force you to use that before you even got going, it's still a worthwhile trade for me. I'm quite happy to do that. Everything in this little bubble here is immune to Battle Shock. The reach in the Screaming Bell's Battle Shock immunity is actually quite high. In hindsight, I probably could have put the Gnawhole a little bit over here, but I don't necessarily care so much about the spell casting this turn. I care more about the Battle Shock immunity. I'm going to get 1 point this turn, and then I've got it there to spend on this unit if I need it, just to hold something into combat. Generally speaking, the way I like to deploy is I like to operate under the assumption that I'm going to lose priority, in which case I ask myself the question, can I do more going first or second? I think I've got too much to lose going second, just because your army does have that Shadow Warriors and they can just delete these. If I didn't have a choice, or maybe you outdrop me, I'd be putting them by the bell.
Okay, so if I had a battalion, for example, or you knew that I had less models, less units, you would deploy a little bit differently.
I would deploy differently. I'd protect them with the Screaming Bell, and I would make sure that if you did choose to do that and you put Shadow Warriors right in front of me, I would have something to punish you for it.
And we have played before again, so your acolytes are no surprise the amount of damage they can put out. So someone who may not have played them in the past may be surprised by the damage output, but for someone who's experienced, they are pretty high. But for someone like me who's like, right, I know how damaged these guys are, you want to protect them as best as possible, especially if you know that your opponent is going first.
Yeah. Couple of the other things that I've set up in here is I'm just going to grab the objectives and look to zone you. I've got my Storm Vermin around the Screaming Bell. They're probably going to hug the Screaming Bell for most of the game, and I will be looking to Death Frenzy them at some point in the fight. The first turn, I'll probably look to Death Frenzy these guys, because one of the important things about your army is you have short range shooting, and the Death Frenzy spell works even in the shooting phase. So if you decide to stand 4 inches in front of me to make an easy charge for yourself, and you shoot them, and I can make sure that you can only shoot them just by moving so far ahead of everything else that everything else is out of range.
And they're just your clan rats, right?
They're just clan rats, but even if they start piling in and attacking in your shooting phase, it'll punish you for shooting them. And then when you charge and shoot again, it gets piling again. So I'll be using that to try and take advantage. And that's generally, I've got a big block of blades and a big block of spears. I tend to put the spears by the Gracie, just so that I've got that extra reach of an inch, even if any sort of damage that comes from that, if it even goes off, I don't particularly care in the first turn. It's just sort of a bonus. It's something to play for. But generally speaking, the hardest hitting units here are all of these back ones that are protected by screens. You've got something that can hit them before I can get going, so I'm going to grab all the objectives and use the clan rats to do what they're supposed to do, which is take a hit. So we also spoke about just beforehand, if you had a very different army, I might deploy differently as well.
Yeah, so if I, let's say, for example, was more of a slower moving army. So this particular build is cavalry, so very high 12 to 15 inch movements. But if I was, let's say, the standard bodies of, 5 or 6 movement, would your deployment changed? Or at least even your decision to give maybe first turn away, would that have happened?
Yeah, it would change. The Pistoliers have a 30-inch threat range because they're in a Tempest Eye army. They move 15 in the first battle round. They can run 6. You do have 2 CP in your first turn. If you were to go first, and you can shoot 9. So you actually can get my good stuff that I do want to protect in the first turn, which is why I'm going first. I would deploy differently if that was the case. Like I said, I would put more valuable stuff maybe further back up by the bell. But if you didn't have that sort of threat on me in the first turn, I would let you go first and come to me, in which case I'd be setting up my acolytes to counterattack, setting up the Stormroom to counterattack, and using Giselles to shoot the stuff at the back, which you want to protect yourself. So I would mess with it a little bit differently, yeah.
And what if I was a battalion and I had less drops than you, so I was going to determine who goes first? Again, would this have changed your deployment?
It would. The bell would probably still be off to one side, but I may swap a couple of things. Like I might put the Giselles a little bit further back along here. I'd probably swap the acolytes and the Giselles. I might even put the Storm Vermin here, or maybe a little bit more central, hugging the bell itself. Put the acolytes here so they can still go any direction because they have a 20-inch threat range, but they're protected from battle shock.
Yeah.
The Giselles I can probably put here without you getting them. Because even if it's like a 9-inch threat range, they're sort of okay against shooting. They have a 4% save against shooting. If you decided to pop Shadow Warriors and shoot them off, I don't think you'd get that far with them. You might pull like a small battle shock, but even then I can still put them far enough back that I can be shielded. So if you're 9 away from me and you've got an 18-inch range, even if I go here, you can't shoot me, but I can still shoot you. So even with my command trait is Deranged Inventor, so I can move and still reroll my hit rolls, even if I don't get more walk power off. I'm quite happy to backboard these guys. Their threat range is high enough, or like I said, use a Gnawhole. And I do have this guy here in the Gnawhole that if you were to go first and move your whole army forwards, which your army generally does sort of want to do, then I can just go for a Gnawhole and steal an objective, and quite happy to sacrifice him for a couple of victory points. He's not that integral. So.
Cool. Well, let's roll some dice. Let's get into the game, and let's see what comes up from a tactical point of view that we want to share. All right, best of luck.
Cool. You too.
All right, Dan, so you've taken first turn, and I'm going to show off in a second the sheer amount of screening that you've put into place when it comes to zone denying out my Shadow Warriors and some of my other little tricks that I've got. Yep. But talk me through, so I'm going to kind of scan the board here, but talk me through what you've done, and more importantly, why have you done it?
Okay, so what I've managed to do is I ran forwards with my screens. There's a couple of important things. It's actually very precisely measured. So all of these guys are still wholly within 13 of the Screaming Bell. So this unit ends here and here. I've specifically put it in such a way that they're still immune to battle shock from the bell. These guys are 9 inches from the back. They're still enough of a range to shoot your Pistoliers, as well as stopping you from coming behind me. So they're very specifically placed. I haven't just moved them forward all the way. I've got Deranged Inventor as my command trait, so because Jezzail's reroll hit rolls if they don't move, I've got that backup plan in case I need to move, and that's where this guy comes in. I've burned 2 Warpstone Sparks. One was in my hero phase to ensure that I got more warp power off. There's no one in unbind range of me. He's quite out the way of the Hurricanum. And I've spent another one for +1 damage as well in the shooting phase. So I've used 2 Sparks already. He hasn't taken any damage, which is good. And I've also used my foot heroes to stop you from coming behind me. So we've got this guy here who's helping zone the back corner. He's helping zone over there with the clan rats, so I've not needed to hug the wall. Behind here I've got the Clawlord, the Jezzails, the Engineer. The Clawlord's still close enough to a Gnawhole that if you panic now and discharge me, I can still jump through a Gnawhole to grab an objective from behind you, or even just appear behind you, because if you ignore him, you're going to have to deal with him. I've used the Bombardier for the same effect. So between the two of them here, they're still zoning you from coming on behind me. The other thing I've used, if you look at this unit, is a bit less regimented. I really don't like movement trays for Skaven. There's a lot of the time you do have to move like this, particularly if you're zoning the board several turns into the game, if someone has a lot of things reserved off the table. Skaven are great at stopping them from coming on, so you can control where they can go. They're great at sort of board control and using space. So that's why I've got a few weird little tails, nothing can come in that corner. He's close enough to this Bombardier to stop coming on there. I've got a slight tail there, just so if you do decide to go on the edge of the board, you're pushing backwards. I've decided to crowd the objective, so even if you decide to charge me and move on to it, I'm going to remove this way in, because all the objectives are sort of very central to the board. You're not going to take that off me. But even if you hit both units as hard as you can, I would be surprised if you got them. And if you do, I've got my Storm Vermin waiting, I've got my Acolytes waiting. So if you just put everything you've got into me, say I win priority, or if just one or two clan rats survive, just into your next combat phase, I'm quite confident I can kill them. One of the things I did decide to do for that reason, just playing the objectives, I didn't move my Square Acolytes as far up as I needed to. I could have put them a little bit more. That way you could still shoot them. The Pistoliers can't shoot them. If you do put Shadow Warriors just in that area, they still can't shoot them because I'm 9 back. But if you do decide to charge me just straight on, they can and they will get you.
And even something like my dragon here. So my dragon, I think, has a base of 15 inch move or 14 inch move, +3 with Tempest die. So even if I was going to go for a first turn charge, you've made it quite difficult, because even the jump over from those clan rats is probably close to a 12-inch charge to get into those acolytes.
Yeah.
And probably you've denied the base large enough that even if I was to hop over with a high movement or a run and charge, I'm probably going to be really hard to be outside of 3 of the entire range of Skaven that you've got on the table. So yeah, so if I had a small base, my Zeros could certainly do that, but what threat isn't a Zeros in the middle of a Skaven army?
Yeah, I'll take that hit.
Yeah, so you know, not only have you denied the zoning of my my Shadow Warriors, and again, you know, we use this as an example of Cities of Sigmar, but imagine you are playing against Stormcast Eternal, whether you're playing a teleporting army like a Change Host. You know, there's a lot of different examples where you can either teleport, come underground, summon. You know, you've really kind of protected your bodies and your heroes, and you're prepared defensively that even if you were to lose the priority roll, that you're in a good spot that you can take the hit and then respond in turn 2, maybe get the double into turn 3, while holding the objective still.
Yeah, so you're not going to get that objective off me. Say you do pull off sort of a huge charge here and sort of get over. Even if you manage to just get over this sort of space here, you might not necessarily pull these guys in, just the base that you're on.
Yeah.
If you tilted it and turned it, maybe, but I would almost trade that, because I think these guys would deal with the dragon. I think the clan rats would tag you in a place you don't necessarily want to be. He's still in range of that objective, so even if you got the dragon there, you're not going to take it off me. I think the Storm Vermin can deal with him, and the amount of damage I did end up doing, sort of with the shooting over here.
Yes, I was going to say, Dan neutralised those Pistoliers. He did mention that they were a threat of his because of the speed, because of the range and the shooting and the double tapping, because they get to shoot in the charge. Yeah. You were able to kill 10, so you did 21 wounds, so that unit is well and truly neutralised. I had to use my only CP, so if I didn't have a spare CP, that whole unit would have run from Battle Shock.
Yeah.
So you forced me to use a CP, and you've neutralised the threat. Yeah,
so we've used the Vigor Dust Injector and the Deranged and just more warp power combined. They will take 2d3 mortal wounds in my next turn. I'm quite happy to do that. They're immune to Battle Shock. The damage is done. Those are the unit I was afraid of. They've been dealt with before you've even got going, and that's ultimately why I went first.
Cool. Anything else, Dan?
Not necessarily. The main thing, like I said before, is sort of I don't like moving trays for Skaven. They're great at zoning. There's times with the board I'll be in all sorts of shapes. One of the reoccurring things I see in a lot of list building at the moment is min battle line of 20s of clan rats. I don't like to do that for the reason I just pointed out. Like I think your screens are hugely important in Skaven, and your screens surviving one turn. So using your Jezzails or Storm Fiends to take off the threat that's going to completely wipe that unit of 40 lets you lose priority. So if you double turn me now, I don't think you're killing all those clan rats.
No, but if you had a unit of 20, I could certainly
You can wipe 20 out and then charge me for sure.
Correct.
Yeah.
I certainly, if that unit of clan rats was only 20, I could thin that out pretty quickly, and then get into those just the acolytes.
Yeah.
And then I've neutralized that threat.
And you stole my objective, and now I have to go this way.
Yeah.
So absolutely.
Cool.
So 40 clan rats.
All right. Well, I'm going to respond. I'm going to see if you've got any other tricks up your sleeve.
Cool.
All right, Dan. So I've just responded in turn 1, and let's just say I've done a bit of a butt kicking, and I have been clearing house when it comes to your clan rats. But you've been lucky enough to win priority here, and you've told me that you got a little bit of a trick up your sleeve.
Okay.
What's the go?
Well, if we look at the board, I'm kind of safe even if I didn't win priority. So I can kind of show you what I would if I lost the turn. I'm kind of relatively safe, and I'll show you why. So over here, the knights are tagged, the dragons tagged, what are these guys called again?
The demigryphs.
Demigryphs are tagged, and these guys are tagged too. I did make a big mistake actually in that I had nothing in range for the battle shock here, which is my own fault, and I could have done that with a bombardier moving forwards. So that's something I made a mistake too. But even with the battle shock, which was quite high, I still managed to tag both units. With me winning priority, I can just blow these guys up now. If I had lost priority, they're stuck in combat here. Even with him shooting, I would just say that I would start taking out from the middle. And the reason for that is even if I break my own coherency, it just stops him from charging me again. Even if I end the turn like this, and he does that much damage with the Outriders, that's a win for me because he's not charging me. So in my turn, I can hit backwards.
And Dan, you mentioned you tagged, so that particular clan rat is 3 inches.
He's within 3 inches of that one dude.
So you've denied me these knights from continuing to charge?
So if you'd won, you get bonuses in the charge, but also if you'd won the priority, all you can do is kill him. So, or you just attack that unit, maybe 1, maybe 2 would get to hit me. So it's neutralizing your attack more than me hurting you. Same sort of thing over here. If you got it, I would maybe give up the objective for 1 turn, but I'd be quite confident I can get it back with what I have behind. With the remaining clan rats I have left, I would be quite confident that they could survive the shooting enough, just to sort of keep maybe 1 or 2 clan rats here, just to hold up your dragon, and to hold up the Outriders. I'd be taking them off this way. These guys retreat and shoot anyway. They're going to shoot these guys. There's not enough of them for me to be too worried. If I lose a couple, so be it. You can never take no casualties in the game unless, well, things are going very well. I'm set up for my Death Frenzy if I need to. And I've also got my Acolytes here that can just deal with all 3 of these with the Bombardier. So even if, I'd be looking to do more warp power over here, but even if it didn't go off, I'm still confident that they could do a decent amount of damage, as long as the dice go with me. But I'd be looking to do that in this spot here. One other thing that's worth noting is the Claw Lord here, the Hurricane was moved with the board. He can go through this Gnawhole and he can grab that corner objective. So because the Hurricaneum's come up to sort of help support over here, it's left that exposed. So even being 9 away from you and 6 of that objective, I can still grab that objective off you. Yeah,
so it was quite tough because Dan had obviously done 21 damage to the Pistoliers. So, the question is, do you try to deny these Gnawholes? Do you go for the objectives? And in this particular scenario, the focal points, there are 5. So it's tough to be going for 5 objectives as well as zone denying up to 3 Gnawholes. So unfortunately, this one got left open. So Dan has taken full advantage of being able to teleport a Bombardier or any particular wizard.
The Claw Lord.
The Claw Lord.
Yep.
Obviously this is anyone could be teleporting. But you've now taken advantage of the space that's created by forcing the hand over here. So in a great position to do some stuff.
There's another thing that I would like to do with where the dragon is. So what my aim would be to do is I would probably try and move my Stormbowman this way, move my Clarence up that way, and I'll sort of show you a trick with charging in and piling in against something that might strike first. So whether Death Frenzy goes off or not, I'm actually safe. I don't need it this turn, and I'll show you why in a moment. But what I'll show you is some sort of retreat and charge mechanics that Skaven do have. that sort of makes them one of the better board control armies in the game.
And it's something that retreating is probably something that people in general, whether you are a Skaven player or not, don't take enough advantage of. So I'm really excited to be able to show off the retreat and charge mechanics, or at least retreat to see how you can take advantage and not just get stuck into combat. So Dan, show me what's up your sleeve.
So what I'm going to do over here is just retreat this way. My banner's still alive, which is what enables retreat and charge.
So we're stuck in combat right now. We know that
we're going to leave.
We're leaving combat. So you've
we
declared.
don't like combat.
So this obviously happens in the movement phase team for anyone who is unfamiliar with retreating.
Yep.
But Dan is choosing to leave combat as long as he remains outside of 3 inches of combat. So we had, as long as he's outside of the Outriders, the Demigryphs, and the Drakespawn Knights, he has left combat.
Okay. Another thing I could do is I could choose to run over here and grab this objective anyway, just for the purpose of this. It would be the smarter thing to do maybe in this situation, because I'm quite confident these guys can handle this. There's a chance I might not. So even if, more power doesn't go off or whatever, I'm just going to show retreating charge as a fail-safe. What I'll be aiming to do is charge her, or him, we don't assume, or charge the Outriders, because it's an easy charge. If I don't roll very high, that's enough for me to still get that way. So even if I moved a range charge and I got a range pylon, I can still steal that objective, and I can tag this unit again. So if the Acolytes don't do their job, they don't kill this unit, say that more warp power doesn't go off, I can still deal with them and tag them, just so in your turn they can't really hurt me.
Yeah.
The other thing that I'm going to look at doing is I'm just going to move my Storm Vermin over here first. So I'd start moving these guys 3 away. What my main objective will be is sort of shuffling over. And I'll explain why momentarily. So I'm going to get out the way to enable my own clan knights to retreat. And there's a reason for this. So my musician, I believe, is dead. But that's enough, that's okay. That's enough to get out. So if I roll a run on these guys, 2, 8, that's probably enough just to get out. So if I get to here, I can get 3 away from this guy, but I've got the hero there, so let's just make this a 6, just for argument's sake.
You spend a command point to do it.
Spend a command point. We're just going to get out of dodge. So we're going to get 12 out. So my musician's dead. Keep your musician alive. The last guy can get to here. We're just going to move out the way. So get back if we need to. Cool.
Obviously, in a real game, Dan wouldn't be jumping over his own dudes, but for the purpose of the speed, we're just moving.
Sometimes do that because it is faster. As long as you move the last guy first, everyone else can get in this way. I'm not going to move those at all, just so that they've got their bonuses to shoot. They're probably going to shoot the Hurricaneum, the Drakespawn Knights, and the rest of these Pistoliers. What I was looking to do if I move these guys out of coherency, I'm just rushing because I'm being filmed. I'm going to charge these and then pile into the dragon. So I'll show you, I guess, what I would do as well as I'd run these guys up. They'd go 9, which is enough. And I actually want to keep these guys alive. I don't want to mess with them in a minute. They're more valuable to me alive than dead at the moment, because I'm quite confident I can wipe them out with Storm Vermin. The one thing that I do want to get rid of is this unit. I also have got to keep these alive just as a backup, just in case I don't roll a very good charge. So all of these guys are probably just going to come this way.
So by killing the Demigryphs, for example, in one go, you've made your charge harder. By having at least one there, you've kind of reduced the threat. But at the same time, you've got a body to slingshot off to claim an objective. I'm sure there's lots of other reasons, but keeping that one model and sometimes not attacking with the full force and making sure that you can leave 1 or 2 models just to guarantee a charge is very important. So you don't always have to shoot off your opponent or magic them off just because you can.
Yeah, sometimes you don't need to. So I will doom rocket them though, just to see what happens.
Sure.
But so what I'd be looking to do, I guess, just for the purpose of demonstrating the video, is I'd be looking to fire all of these here just to try and remove them. For argument's sake, they probably would.
It's a very good chance.
Very high chance, particularly if more warp power goes off, which it didn't, but whatever. These guys here, I'd then be looking at, even without it, I still think they'd remove that unit. But shooting, these guys would roll a charge. So 12, it's a pretty good charge. we're just going to come over here. We're not afraid of that.
And this wizard's so dead. But if you didn't roll if you didn't roll the 12, let's say you rolled a 5 or a 6.
Not a 2. A 5 would probably be enough where I would maybe start moving a bit differently. So I'd maybe put one guy here within half an inch and start to loop around a little bit. So if my guys are here, like I said, I could just run onto the objective.
Yeah.
If they survived, I would hold a couple back. But I have enough there that even with a 5, I can take the objective. Or even if I'm further back, right? Assuming these guys are dead, my pylon will still let me sort of move on to the objective.
Yeah, and as long as you've got 2 there, you've claimed that because there's only 1 model. You've got your wizard. That's it.
With the Storm Vermin, I'd look to charge 11, that's great. Basically what I'd look to do is stand a bunch of guys 3 inches away. So this guy isn't getting pulled into combat from the charge. I have a 2-inch reach and a 3-inch pylon, so I can get him from 5 away. So I'm just going to put everyone here. I should be able to get a couple of rows into combat with them. And then just swarm these guys as well. So I'm going to take this objective back. I'm rushing, but be mindful that you still have to end closest to the nearest model. So even if I'm going that way, it would be more of these guys coming through.
Yeah, we could be properly measuring and using combat gauges, and for the purpose of this video, I think everyone understands what to do appropriately. Yeah. But you're kind of getting the idea of how you want to aim for.
In an actual game, I'd probably shoot the Giselles at him or over there just to get rid of these guys. Come in, I'm just showing you something you might be able to use in the context of a game. If we're playing for real, I'd approach it a little bit differently, and I'd probably just choose my targets separately. I might choose to weaken them with some Giselles already. I would lose a couple of Giselles just from the previous turn. I'll probably keep the Clawlord there anyway, just to buff them to make sure the dragon goes. That's another option.
And certainly I probably would have screened off the
Gnawhole
a bit better.
Or at least keep the objective.
But you can kind of see how from that particular tactic, by stretching the side of the board, the choice was either keep defending the Gnawhole or to actually then go and try to respond to these Giselles that have been shooting me. So you kind of put your opponent in a very interesting position that they need to start making decisions, and you then can capitalize.
Another really good point, say Death Frenzy did go off, I just attack here. As these guys attack back, when I start removing, I can pile them over here and hit the dragon even though he can't hit me. So just where you choose to remove those models from and that unit. Like I said, in a real game, I'd probably try to weaken them a little bit, or at least sort of hurt the things around them. I could look at tagging this unit when I do pile in, just to make sure that they can't hit me again with full power the next turn. Another thing you could choose to do, you can't do it with the Screaming Bell, but I could charge this guy in here, and then when I activate him, move him off onto an objective. It's sort of if it's, say you're in the middle of the board, I've done that a few times, where I might charge a guy into, say, maybe this space, roll a big charge to there, and then use the just leave combat ability that Skaven have just to go over here and try and grab something. Like I've done that before, activate there first just to leave right away. I'm just trying to show some examples with as much context as possible, I guess. But
and I think people are starting to understand, one, the importance of retreating. Just because you're in combat doesn't mean you have to shoot and fight in combat, but rather there is an option to retreat. And you can start to see how by moving around the board, especially in the retreat, you can start to claim objectives that potentially people weren't even thinking about.
Yeah, I would say in a real game, I probably would look to just remove all of this stuff and then just take the hit. Especially if I got Death Frenzy, I'll just charge into the dragon without it. Shooting the dragon is more important. I mean, it depends on your situation and what game you're playing. I'm not necessarily saying the examples I'm showing you now is what I should do in this game. Some of them probably no, but it's something that's available to you. I mean, in this game, you'd want to keep Clawlord here.
And by the way, in a real game, I actually won the priority with a 5. But again, the purpose of the video is to demonstrate the tips and tactics for you to be able to win objectives, to be able to manipulate the board. And as Skaven players, that's probably one of your key strengths. You've got the high movement, the high bravery, and you can manipulate the board through things like running and charging and retreating to really maximize the way that you play the game and deny your opponent from teleporting, scoring, getting into combat where they want to get into combat. A whole bunch of things, which I think is exciting as a Skaven player.
Yeah, and then you sort of adapt what you're doing. I mean, we've operated on the assumption I don't have Death Frenzy on the Storm Vermin. If I do, even losing the priority. Like I said, I've still got some clan rats left which are holding a lot of units up, so I don't necessarily mind losing priority. But then say that, you know, a couple of them did get out, or you wipe the unit entirely. If Death Frenzy's on this unit, you're still pretty safe. So then that might be a reason to put the Gnawhole maybe slightly to the side. Maybe that's something I should have done. So who knows? I'm a little bit rusty. I haven't played that much in the lockdown. But yeah, so using your movement to your advantage. If the kill is there, go for it. I mean, the best way to win the game is to just table your opponent in one go. I'm just trying to show, because Anthony does have a strike first mechanic, something that you might be able to do differently if you don't have Death Frenzy off. If you do have Death Frenzy, feel free just to charge him right off the bat. You'll take him down with you. But a lot of these are more either objective play strategies, or sometimes not necessarily desperation tactics, but something that can keep you hanging in the game. Because if you're sort of playing this game where you run to them as hard as you can, they run to you as hard as you can, you're not always going to win that exchange. So just some of the other things you can do to dance around opponents. Like if you do have a big block of Mortec guard and you don't have Death Frenzy, like shooting's how Skaven deal with that, but you might just want to start retreating and charging some of the smaller, less powerful units and just tagging the end of the 40 Mortec. If there's like a unit of 10, go beat that up and then just trap the big unit of 40 with retreat and charge of clan rats, or even storm vermin. They become secondary clan rats when you need them to. Acolytes are great, just really good shooting. I would say, generally speaking, the damage in Skaven comes from either Storm Fiends, Acolytes, or Jezzails. I would say go with Acolytes and Jezzails or Storm Fiends. You still go with Plague Monks, and you still got Death Frenzy with Storm Vermin or Plague Monks. But I would pick either this combination or the Storm Fiends. The disadvantage with this is they're a lot frailer, especially to enemy shooting, and that's where deployment's really important. So you look at your opponent's threat ranges, how are you going to deploy? Can someone get my Jezzails? You can probably outrange them most of the time with Skaven. The problem with Storm Fiends is, in order for me to really impact a game like this, I'd have to deploy very central. I can't be over here and over here, or if I do jump through the side of a Gnawhole, I mean, I can always jump back later, which is another strategy you can use. It's very hard to influence the game in a movement way just as much. So use your screens, stand behind them, retreat and charge if you need to steal objectives, and then just sort of have your punch waiting behind it. And that's really what I tried to demonstrate this game. Of all the damage was hiding behind the screens. And the screens, if they do survive, they do tank things, they can go and get objectives. Your opponent has to deal with them. If not, you can just blow them up.
Awesome. Well, Dan, this has been an absolute pleasure, an absolute masterclass as well, to see how, again, we've played for years now, and it's always an amazing opportunity to play you and see how you use these bodies. If this is something that's been interesting, guys, and you'd like to see more of these, do let me know, and I can start to explore other armies. But Dan, any final comments before we close out the video?
I didn't forget T3 mortar wounds this time. I did last time, so I wore that shit. Which is too small for me, and I may as well be shirtless because it's tight.
All right, well, Dan, well done. It was a draw. Warhammer won. No, it was a great game, and I think hopefully you walked away with a few ideas, hints, tips, and tricks on how a Skaven master is using his army on battle.
That's just how I play. So that's how I've sort of played with them for years. That didn't really change when they got a book. So yeah, hang in there. There's always something you can do, usually, until the last model's off the table.
I love that. I love that attitude. All right, thanks, Dan. Thanks, everybody. Hope you enjoyed this video.
Thanks.
G'day. I hope you enjoyed that video and you're left with some new ideas. One of the biggest ways you can contribute to AOS Coach is by liking the video you just watched and leaving a comment in the comment section. This lets YouTube know this is a good video and it should recommend it to other hobbyists. If you'd also like to support the channel even further like these bloody legends, go check out AOS Coach on Patreon. Otherwise, don't forget your triumph.